Hey, welcome to Keep Sane. This is going to be episode 13, going to be about the NAACP and Colin Kaepernick. I'm typing it out as I say it so I don't forget what I'm talking about, um, which is kind of sad because I shouldn't. But every now and then I get off topic enough and I'm like, oh yeah, what was my original point of what I was talking about today? So that's my little reminder. Also, when I publish them, to put them on on Facebook, on YouTube, I have something to reference. Um, Pretty much the NAACP is calling for a boycott of the NFL in regards to Colin Kaepernick. And my big problem with this is not that they're trying to push him getting a chance in the NFL, but there's so much with Colin Kaepernick that I don't feel is being reported. He opted out of his 49ers contract. He wanted a different start. This is a year after he wouldn't take a pay cut to go to the Denver Broncos. Again, these are rumors, so how much of this is factual, I don't know. Um, but my problem with them calling for a boycott until he's on a roster is forced behavior. Um, and it's unfair to, teams that don't need a quarterback. Colin Kaepernick legitimately, I believe, still wants to be a starting quarterback, or at least on a team that would have a need for a starting quarterback or might still be considering their future franchise QB, one of which is a team he opted out of. So 49ers, probably out of pride, wouldn't bring him back. Um, Jaguars, who knows? Because there's also scheme fit. I don't know if the head coach would think Colin Kaepernick was a fit. Like the 49ers, I believe, are just waiting for Cousins to be available from the Redskins. Maybe the Redskins should try out Kaepernick, to see if he would eventually be the heir apparent or at least learn the system for a year. So when Cousins isn't there. But I mean, I could talk about the NFL and QB needs. I probably will a bunch here, but the whole point would be, you know, yeah, support what he did. I don't believe the only thing negative that Colin Kaepernick ever did to me was wear the little piggy socks. Only because it was a negative thing. I mean, awareness of police brutality and all that I agree with. I believe it should be something discussed and, that people are aware of and, you know, and all that stuff. Um, that was done negatively. The kneeling for the anthem, I support that. If he's doing it, and to raise awareness because it's what people talk about. I don't think until he did that, I don't think anybody cared about what happened. They didn't do, pan cameras on the sidelines to see what the players were doing. Not to mention, I think, and at this point, I'm going to throw in, if you don't already know, I am a white guy from, Oregon, so I lived a pretty sheltered life. So if that influences how you listen to this, maybe that alone should let you know that you have some racism issues. Um, you know, I fully support him doing what he wants with his life. Um, but he did do something, you know, I don't know if he discussed it with anybody else to have made it to attempted to have made it a more universal, so it wasn't just him under the spotlight to take the heat. People are doing it all over. They're definitely not taking the heat he did. People ask, but it seems way more accepted. Um, and but I guess by saying I'm a white guy, I don't think we can. Well, especially me, I have no right to say what his viewpoint is on the anthem or the flag or stuff like that. It's what I just have issues with the NAACP threatening to go after the NFL for a player to be on a roster. If the NAACP wants to make an agreement and pay his salary to a team to give him a shot, that might be different, but that's not in the story. So if that's something they're offering to do, then that news didn't get, you know, published out to the world. Um, I know Atlanta doesn't need a QB. They have a very good quarterback. And again, I believe Colin Kaepernick wants to be a starting quarterback, which means he can't go to any team that currently has a quarterback as a solid number one. I mean, maybe Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh, Roethlisberger's not sure, but he'd still have to be willing to sit behind Roethlisberger. Nobody's going to bring in a quarterback to create controversy at who's starting. A lot of teams don't want the distraction. The other part of my thing is, whether, I mean, I would love to see what he was originally asking from clubs for money, because I know that was an issue with Denver, who did want him 2 years ago. Um, I believe would have still taken him after the whole kneeling thing. But, you know, clubs shouldn't be penalized if they don't need a quarterback. Colin Kaepernick, when he did it, he knew he was going to probably get some spotlight. I highly doubt he did it thinking no one would care or pay attention. Otherwise, why do it? We all make choices that can have consequences. Is this consequence seem like too much? Probably. I'm not part of any of those interactions. I think to just blanket look at it and be like, he should be on a roster is a little bit presumptuous. I don't, me having watched him play, I don't think he is a quarterback I would bring on my team to win. If he wants to, if he would be okay with being a backup, I'd absolutely take him as a number two. If he's willing to take that sort of money, and if he ends up proving to be a better option over who I have, then he would have a chance to win that spot and then get a pay raise. But if he's wanting over a prove it, you know, now, okay, I will say this. I would take him as a number two, and I would pay him as a number two, but I wouldn't pay him like a minimum number two. I still think he has the potential to end up a starter. Physically, he's there. Um, I don't know decision wise. I've seen a lot of bad decisions, but 49ers had a bad offensive line. I'm definitely not going to judge his entirety. I do know, well, he's been to the Super Bowl behind a really awesome defense. So he made some good plays, but I don't put that on him because as soon as the defense collapsed, so did he. Um, and again, I didn't watch every snap and every play. I know watching other people analyze his play that definitely know way more about football and the quarterback position than I do, that he has mixed reviews as far as caliber of player. I'm not talking about him as a person. I don't know him. I know what I've seen news-wise, and he seems like his heart is in the right place. I mean, I have no issues with that. But the NAACP going after teams in the NFL, who I have issues with too. I mean, I think we all have gripes about certain things that happen in the league that like football. But to go and ban and boycott the NFL until he gets signed is ridiculous. You're not giving the information. Would he play for any team? Would he play at any, depth chart position? Would he go to as number two? Would he go to Pittsburgh knowing he has to sit behind Roethlisberger? Although they do have Dobbs, who showed pretty good to me. I think he looks like he's their eventually successor. Although if they need someone sooner, who's had more experience, Roethlisberger might be a fit. I mean, Colin's more athletic than Roethlisberger. Roethlisberger used to be a pretty solid runner as far as a load to try to take down. Miami went after Cutler. Reason? 100% because he already knew the offense. Yeah, he was rusty on it, but he knew it. He could come in. He had the experience. You could knock Cutler for whatever, and I have before. But it makes sense to go for him. Yeah, I'm surprised, but there's got to be more to the story. Is the point? I mean, for them to go after the league just is missing something here. It's like, where's the rest of the information? The Ravens, Colin Kaepernick calls the Ravens owner a racist because he didn't sign him. Well, I don't know what the discussions were. I mean, if for her calling him a racist seems a little bit ridiculous. I mean, if he is, I don't know, but I also don't think that would help him get signed. If he is, maybe Colin wouldn't want to play for him. And I'm not trying to put thoughts or words into anybody's mouth, but from an outsider, I mean, that's the whole thing. People who post stuff are trying to get a certain viewpoint, their particular viewpoint across. And especially with Colin, it seems like there's a lot of missing story. Football's not, players don't play for free. And, there's a lot of players that price themselves out of the league. There's also different things with being a veteran, how much you have to get paid. Certain teams have cap issues. And I don't mean Colin cap issues. I mean like cap, salary cap issues. They can't afford to play guys so much. Or they have to wait until after the first week of the season, so they don't have to guarantee the money with the veterans. But I still go back to he opted out of a contract that was going to pay him over 10 million a year to get out of San Francisco. If he thought he had a different future ahead of him, it was his choice. He's made choices that, fair or not, he would be a San Francisco 49er right now had he not opted out of his deal. To my understanding, I don't think they would have cut him. With the roster they have at quarterback, I think he would have still been there as right now as their number one. And if I'm wrong on that, I'm wrong on that. But that's from the outside looking in, from things you read and everything else. That's what it seems like it would have been. I mean, part of me thinks he was thinking he would opt out and then go to Denver. But Denver, I mean, Elway has no intention of paying him the money he wants to pay. I think he wanted to pay him. Oh shoot, I'm gonna mess up this number. I thought they wanted to pay him like 7 million. Um, Probably totally hacking at. Don't quote it. Like anybody's listening anyway. But that's the number I thought I read. And again, this was a year-ish ago. Um, so it's just one of those things with this sort of thing. I have a hard time believing that it makes sense to force a behavior onto a league that, you know, he may not want to play for any team. He may not want to play for any price. He may not want to be paid to play a number two role, or fight for a roster spot. So I just would like to hear the whole story about, and we're not privy to it. They don't have to tell us, but to go after a league for one player and to boycott, I mean that also seems to put a lot of pressure on people who support the NAACP, and I believe it's only the Atlanta chapter. I don't think it's national, from what I've read. I don't think. I'm trying to look here real quick to see NYPD's rally in support of Kaepernick. I think only Atlanta is calling for the boycott. Um, let's see here. I'm trying not to have too much dead time here. I tried to look up a little bit, but I keep seeing Atlanta chapter. Yeah, I still see only Atlanta chapter, which Atlanta is one of the main teams that don't need a quarterback. So it seems like if you want to do this, find a place that a team he should be on. Why not? Is there a Baltimore chapter or a Jaguars chapter? I think he'd be a great fit for the Jags. I like Chad Henne, but I think Bortles is done. And again, would he go to the Jags, and would he take a $4 million payday with some incentives that could make him up to 10? I would love to have answered these questions. I really don't know. But I mean, I don't think I'm really covering anything new. I'm just saying the same stuff over again. Other than, not going to go to the Browns. They're still debating if they're going to do Osweiler. Um, I'm trying to think who else. I mean, as far as backups go, he could probably go a lot of places. Here, let me pull up team roster because I always forget teams that have needs. Speaking of quarterbacks, total side note, I also think that, I'd like to see Mannion go to some place he'd have a shot at number two to develop. Cutler to the Jets, maybe. Not sure if he'd want to play for the Jets. I'm not sure that he fits the scheme even, but he's got to be an upgrade over Hackenberger Petty from what I've seen. I know they're trying to evaluate those young guys without distraction, but at what point do you call Colin Kaepernick to be like, hey, again, will you take $6 million to see if you can come help this sinking ship for this season? Or maybe they're trying to suck for a particular player and get a good draft pick. I have no idea. I'm trying not to get off topic with this stuff. I'm just trying to find out. I just want to get a list of teams in front of me so I can go through places I think would make sense. And again, it's beyond just where, it's a bigger issue than that, but I would like my viewpoint on where there's needs. Giants don't have a need. Again, maybe number two, they brought in Geno Smith. You bring in Geno Smith, Kaepernick is a mobile, strong-arm quarterback, so maybe. Cleveland, I don't think is making any choices to bring in any other people until they figure out what they've got. since they have so much money invested at the position. Baltimore has a need with Flacco hurt. Miami doesn't. Buffalo, I would think not a bad idea to bring him in. Philly doesn't have any need. Um, I don't think Tampa Bay does. I think Jacksonville does. I don't think Minnesota or Seattle does. I'm just going over the final scores here. If you're wondering where I'm getting my order of list, um, Carolina doesn't to me. Tennessee doesn't. Kansas City's questionable. Mahomes is apparently seems to be the person they're grooming to take over for Alex Smith, but that doesn't mean there may be because I like Alex Smith. But then again, you wouldn't keep Smith and Kaepernick on the same roster, I wouldn't think, after the whole San Francisco thing. I don't think Alex Smith would be too happy with that. Um, Cincinnati seems to have a solid 1 and 2. Indy, depending on Luck's shoulder, that might be something, but that's a stopgap, and Luck is their franchise quarterback, so it'd be temporary. Dallas is set. Jets have a need. Detroit doesn't have a need. Green Bay doesn't have a need. Washington's intriguing to me because they have a quarterback who they don't believe in long term, who San Francisco is waiting for. So bringing him in as a backup, paying him as a number 2 on a 1-year deal might be a smart thing, because they don't have a number 2 that they love. I mean, I don't hate their backup quarterbacks, but you know, if they need a future starter and they don't want to have to draft a rookie to try to do it, that's a good thought. Um, I don't think New England or Houston has any need at this point. LA's unknown. Goff's still either going to prove or disprove. Oakland's got a franchise QB. Denver has a need, but again, the way it was handled before, I don't think Elway would bring him in at this point because of him not willing to take less money. And, human nature, Elway might hold a grudge about him not coming in before. And they drafted Lynch to be the eventual successor, even though Simeon's currently winning the job. So maybe he burnt that bridge. Chicago has 2 quarterbacks already fighting it out. Arizona has Carson Palmer. Number 2, again, question. Palmer's not always healthy. Maybe that's an intriguing fit. Atlanta's set. Pittsburgh, Roethlisberger's getting ready to retire, but if they believe in Dobbs as their future, they don't need a number 2. New Orleans, who knows how long Breeze is going to play? They don't have their backups seem to be good. The Chargers seem to have a couple of number 2s. I like Kellen Clemens. But if he keeps getting hit like he does, he might not be able to keep playing. But I think he is a number 2 somewhere. But he knows. I think a lot of these number 2s, I mean, other than a few of them, know they're number 2 QBs. I don't know by looking at Kaepernick, he has games that look like he could be that guy for number 1, and so that limits places that he can go. Again, not knowing money and everything else. The reason I bring it up is it seems like there's a lot of missing information, and I just think the NAACP essentially making it such a big deal and trying to force behavior wouldn't bring him into the league with a positive attitude. I mean, forcing stuff creates animosity, and that's negative. You want him to have a truly fair chance. I still think he's going to get signed. Injuries happen. I really do. And hopefully it's a better fit. Quarterbacks. I'm a Detroit Lions fan. I'm from Oregon, so who knows why other than Barry Sanders. But I've seen quarterbacks go to the Lions and just get destroyed behind offensive lines, and doing that to a quarterback's a bad thing. I mean, so just wishing him on any roster, he probably doesn't even want that. Otherwise, I assume, could be totally wrong, that he would be on a roster. If he was willing to play for any team at this point. So I think he's still looking for a possible starting gig. Maybe the Ravens were interesting because he thought he'd play enough on a 1-year deal to prove to someone else that he is still a franchise QB. I mean, I haven't seen it on tape lately, other than some flashes, but who knows? We'll see. Anyway, have a good one.